Hi, Andrew from Sachs, and welcome to video number 4 in our 9-video sequence on stakeholder engagement. This one is all about quick trust. Quick trust being how do we quickly build confidence and a strong, enduring relationship with somebody else. This will be drawing heavily on the work of Helen Rees, a researcher from the United States of America, who developed a program which has the acronym EMPATHY. EMPATHY stands for eye contact, muscles of the face, posture, affect, tone of voice, hearing the whole person, and your response. Now, Helen Rees did a lot of her original work in the medical sector. And in the United States of America, it's a really serious question about why certain doctors get sued, malpractice. And in fact, it turns out that the form of interactions that those doctors have with people can often be different from the form of interactions that people have who don't get sued. And so that was one of the early motivators for this research, but has been applied much more widely beyond the clinical sector now. And so here are some of the keys that Helen Rees found for good quality interaction. So eye contact is all about building the right amount of eye contact. Now this is an interesting thing because it's a cultural thing, isn't it? Eye contact and appropriateness of eye contact varies from culture to culture. So here in Australia, we know that, for instance, in certain Indigenous groups, it's rude for a younger person to make eye contact with an elder. And so you avoid eye contact with an elder because that's considered to be impolite. The only problem is that when, let's say, a police officer interacts with an Indigenous person who has learned this way of using eye contact, then the evasive eye contact can be interpreted in a different way in a Western interpretation. It can be interpreted as being shifty or having something to hide or something like that. The key thing is that people need to learn appropriateness of eye contact. Also, to mention something about working remotely, one of the things that's really important is where is your camera? I mean, we see people who are looking at a screen, but the camera is over here, so they're not actually making eye contact with their stakeholder. Check your video setup because that will be a distancing effect. But in a one-on-one interpersonal sense, practice the eye contact that you make and maybe ask for feedback from time to time. If you're avoiding people's eye contact, and people do this stuff intuitively, don't they? They've learnt this in life and they don't even know that they're doing it. But learning the appropriate amount of eye contact can be a really powerful way of building relationships. The eyes, after all, are the window to the soul, we're told by the poets. The second thing is M for muscles of facial expression, and this really shows us a fascinating research finding. Did you know that there are 7 basic facial expressions no matter where you are on planet Earth? No matter what your cultural background is, this is truly genetic stuff. We appear to have shared this from our African ancestors, 7 basic emotions. So on the left here you have happiness, here you have surprise, here you have sadness, here you have anger, here you have fear, and here you have contempt, and here you have disgust. And those last 2 are probably the more difficult ones to recognize. It turns out that people who are good at recognizing this stuff, in fact, tend to have better relationships with other people. This is a key aspect of non-verbal recognition. And for those of you who have ever heard of the autism spectrum disorder, people on the autism spectrum are often not great at recognizing these emotions, and that's one of the challenges that they have interpersonally. So one of the things that the empathy program of Helen Rees encourages people to do is to actually practice this, to watch videos and to recognize the emotions that people are going through. Being better at recognizing other people's emotions, in short, causes you to be able to build stronger relationships and quicker trust. The next one is about posture. What is an appropriate posture? Well, if you're too relaxed for a very formal meeting, well, maybe that's not a good thing. On the other hand, if you're having a relaxed conversation with somebody and you're sort of leaning forward and making very intense eye contact, then that's not appropriate. Again, Helen Rees and the empathy program would encourage you to practice these things to cause yourself to be using the right posture, consciously causing the right posture to be present in whatever interaction you're undertaking. A is for affect. That's all about the emotional content of what you do. One of the things that we have to understand is that if you want to build strong relationships with people, in general, people prefer positive affect to negative affect. And in fact, it's often been said that a ratio of about 5 to 6 to 1 is a good ratio. So 5 to 6 positive things for every 1 negative thing that you undertake. And we know that, for instance, where people do that, where they have strong presence of positive interactions. So things like solutions, things like positive emotions, things like optimism, it will tend to make people more likely to want to remain in a relationship with you. People who have negative or cynical interactions, yeah, it might feel good for a moment, but it doesn't tend to engender strong trust. So I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to demonstrate an optimism, an efficacy, as we call it in psychology. Efficacy means, look, we can do this. We can get this done together. That's efficacy. Choosing the tone of voice is really important. I think also what can be important is the speed of voice. If you want somebody to believe that what you're saying is important, one of the things that can be really useful to do is to slow down. So if you speak to people in this form, sometimes they will notice that when you're speaking more slowly like this, it causes people to think, okay, maybe what this person is saying is important. You'll also notice that I'm using a kind of a balanced tone. So this is a kind of a way of making a kind of a thoughtful argument and giving you an opportunity to hear what I have to say. It's a good public speaking technique as well, by the way, because it causes you, speaking slowly gives you the opportunity to think about what you're going to say next. If, on the other hand, what you're talking about is quite an emotional topic and the person's emotional, one of the worst things that you can do is to seem very calm. You have to raise your level of emotion to just below theirs. So that might be like if they're very agitated to say, yeah, look, I can see that you're upset about this. Let's work together to solve this problem. That's going to be far more persuasive than using a very calm tone of voice, which sort of suggests, well, you're wrong. You know, you're saying to them their approach to the thing is not correct. Second last element of the empathy program is hearing the whole person. And that's really about putting together the messages that you've got, both verbally and non-verbally, to try to really understand where the person is. Now, one of the things that Helen Rees found in her work with clinicians is that there are some people who did this automatically and other people who just never did it. And hearing the whole person can be very powerful from a relationship point of view, but also from a clinical outcomes point of view. And stakeholder management is like that, isn't it? We're trying to build a strong relationship in order to be able to achieve something. And finally, your response. And your response is about understanding how the person is feeling from an emotional point of view, how they're thinking from a cognitive point of view. Are they persuaded about what's going on? And you'll see this point, how is your amygdala? The point that we're trying to make there is that your amygdala is responsible for the fight, flight, and freeze response. When people's amygdala becomes active and they edge towards fight, flight, or freeze mode, the person that they're interacting with will often unconsciously pick that up. And that causes them to escalate their amygdala activity. I'm sure you've seen this, where somebody's agitated and they talk to somebody else who becomes agitated, and the whole thing, all of a sudden it turns into a screaming match at worst case, or perhaps it could be even worse than that. The point is, being conscious of where your amygdala is can be very important to have the kind of interaction that you want to have. If you know this, and then you can take yourself away and calm yourself down, center yourself so that you can deal with the issue in a calm and effective fashion, that can be really powerful. So that's the empathy program. It's a way of building strong interpersonal relationships and engendering this thing called quick trust. How can we quickly build relationships with other people that will cause us to be able to build an enduring partnership? So the next video in this sequence is about planning and interaction. If you're going to have a good quality interaction with a stakeholder, like anything else, you have to start well, you have to do the middle bit well, and you have to finish well. In this video, we're going to show you that it's the start and the finish that are absolutely crucial. Click on the link near this video to join us.